with leaders. Come on, everyone. Drinks with leaders. It's time to have fun. Business people, lots of ideas. You need some advice? Come right here. Drinks with leaders is here.
Oh my goodness, you switched from the reindeers to Christmas trees. Look at you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. We only have a few more Tuesdays left in December. Can you believe that?
I cannot. I think we're this close to slowing down. So work is pretty hectic right now. How's your work?
Well, yeah, it's about hectic. We kind of in marketing, we do the two things. Everyone has their marketing dollars they need to spend real quick, or they're getting ready to spend their marketing dollars in January 1. So we get hit kind of double here. How about you? End of year?
No, that's really unique. I didn't realize with budgeting coming up, but yeah, it's thinking of that. But I'm really thinking about Bank of Blue Valley and our meeting we just had with Sean and Felicia, who've been really wonderful partners, are helping plan out the show. And we got to do a lot of work with Lily and James Creative, did a lot of work with Wendy Reynolds and her team. And we're going to be incorporating more. So this banter right here that some may say is subpar is going to get evaporated, and we're going to do cool stories about the great work that Bank of Blue Valley is doing in our community. And like our guest on the show today, the great work that they do in the community as well. So excited to have a lot of great storytellers.
I think you misunderstood me. I wasn't told that the banter was subpar. I was told that they wanted us to banter a little bit more about current events.
Well, I think our banter, we're always our worst critic, but I just want to feature more of the video that you put together because I think it's really good.
There is. Yes. I'm super excited. We've got a lot of stuff coming in 2021. I do want to talk about something real quick we rolled out today. So we are now doing reminders for this show. So we will put them out in the mornings and you can click on and say, remind me. And it will tell you right there on your LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever you're watching us from, hey, it's getting ready to get started, and we'll tell you who our guests are and everything like that. So it should be super fun. I do want to say hi to everybody. I can already tell there's a bunch of people watching. Jump in here. Let us know if you're watching from LinkedIn or from Facebook. And we have an incredible lineup today, so who you're excited to see as well.
Absolutely. I can't believe you figured that out. And literally anything you type in the comments box, we will probably read. So get in.
Almost. Listen, I see who's on our show today, so I can't imagine who's over here in the comments. So I gotta make sure I don't lose this LinkedIn license. So almost anything you type. That's like me being an attorney, right? Look, we've already got Mr. Mickey Parker. He's been on the show before. He likes the reminder. I'm glad it worked for you. And Jason is over watching us on LinkedIn. So welcome, Jason. Let us know who you're excited to see. And then tell us who you are. This is a great networking opportunity. So we got all sorts of people over here. And Tisha, I hope I'm saying your name right, over on LinkedIn. Robin is watching us on Facebook. Our Facebook audience is growing. Got our good old Matthew and Bill. And another Bill. There's a lot of Bills watching today. Do you have any friends named Bill?
Lots of them. Are we ready? We ready to dance?
I'm ready. So you told me I'm in charge of music today, so I pulled the only sports music I know.
Oh, it's perfect. I mean, this is one of the guests. I'm assuming we probably listened to this song playing basketball in the driveway growing up. So this will be a great song.
Hold on real quick before we start. I got to show you this. Angie, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, said, Happy Tuesday, Scott and Aaron. She's already interviewed Joel and Harry for us. So she got them all ready to come on here today.
And go check out her LinkedIn page. She is an author. And especially those that know about the foster care system, it's a wonderful opportunity to explore and learn about the work that Angie's doing in the community.
All right. Matt said, let's dance. Let's get going. So here we go. Let me get my sports music. I'm so good at sports.
Starting lineup. I thought he was Frank White Jr., but he's Frank White Jr. the third. Mr. Frank White.
How you doing?
Number 2, who informed me it was Frank White the third, not the second. You may know him from 100 different outlets, but it is the famous Joel Goldberg.
I've hung out with Frank White the third and Frank White Jr.
And number 3, not the third, but he returned a touchdown and caught a touchdown against Bishop Miege in 2004-2003 football season, Mr. Drew Eanes.
Made it.
It was a really good return. And finally, the Godfather, the guy Harry Campbell.
Hey, I didn't realize I was supposed to have walk-up music. John Cougar Hurt So Good is my song, so you can do that anytime you want.
Ooh.
Oh, okay. Let me get on that.
Walk-up music for my speeches.
Oh, I like it. I don't get walk-up music for my speeches. We're going to get to that in a little bit. And you guys might as well just prepare. I'm going to want to know what your walk-up music would be now that he's put that out there. So thank you all so much for coming on the show. I already know we've already got a ton of comments over here. So start getting your questions over here because we're going to get so many. I'm only going to get to a few in just a little bit. But we're going to start with how we always start. Mr. Frank White III. Who are you? What do you do? And how do you end up here today?
Okay. Obviously, I'm Frank White III, not Junior. What I do is I work for RideKC 11 Corporation. I'm the vice president of development. We are the economic development arm of the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority. So we have a lot of economic tools and powers available to us. And so what we do is go out and work on our transit corridors to create density, development, housing, job access, and revenue streams for the KCATA. Is just what I do. How I got here, born and raised in Kansas City from the east side on 29th and Olive by way of Lee Summit, Missouri. And for those, it's pretty obvious. My father played professional baseball for 20 years in Kansas City, worked with Joel for a long time, drank a lot of whiskey with Joel. And it was a unique experience. And somehow I've come out of it with not needing any therapy or having any mental trauma. So I feel fairly normal. And living in Lee Summit and fortunate to have great friends like you guys to have me on shows like this.
And you're currently drinking whiskey right now, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'm hiding it because I didn't know what your license rules were. But
no, you can drink. You just can't cut.
Okay, well, I've got my J. Rieger in my glass here. And I do miss the slide. That's what I do miss about COVID. I can't go down the slide anymore and fall on my tail. So it's a good thing, though.
They have it all taped up. If you haven't been there, they have it all taped up. You can't even sneak down.
No, I'm like Joel. I don't go out. I mean, I stay home. I don't go anywhere. So once a quarter. That's about it. So.
Well, welcome to the show. Thank you
you
for bringing your drink because it is Drinks with Leaders. So you're more than welcome. And Jay Rieger is awesome. Andy Rieger's actually been on the show before.
All I heard from Scott was drinks. And after that, I didn't ask any more questions. I was like, I'm there.
We would probably assume that if it was 9:30 in the morning, but it's okay.
It's 12:30 somewhere.
Somewhere it is. Mr. Joel Goldberg, who are you? What do you do? How'd you get here? And are you running for office?
I am definitely not running for any kind of office. I will leave that to Frank White Jr. I don't know if Frank White III has any interest in that, but and I never thought my former broadcast partner would be a politician, but I did bump into him a couple of weeks ago, and I remembering that he prefers a handshake over a hug. He's not a hugger, so I settled for the elbow bump because that's what we do now in 2020. I am getting ready for my 14th season. Wow. Of Kansas City Royals baseball. I came here in 2008, grew up Philadelphia and then Chicago, came here from St. Louis where I worked previously in television. So got here in 08, pregame, postgame show host for the Royals. About 4 years ago, I started a speaking business to coincide with the baseball career to talk about leadership and culture, lessons learned in the locker room that translate into everyday life and business. Started a podcast, Rounding the Bases. And I think today is probably a pretty good example of sort of my life. I had my podcast this morning. I did a Royals television show. And what else? And I got Drinks with Leaders right now. So some good networking opportunities. And I've got my first book coming out next Monday. So it's kind of all over the place. I'm trying to be Harry Campbell is really all I want to be.
Well, Joel, we keep elaborating on that. If you want to make it, I mean, can you tell us about the book, or should we wait till the second go around when we talk about some recent wins? Are you ready to dance now?
No, I'll wait for the win, because now I don't have to think about another win since I already have that in my back pocket, and I'll just let Drew or Harry talk because they're more interesting anyway.
Well, we're super excited to have
I'm
you
not
on.
writing a book anytime soon, so I don't know about more interesting. So.
I'll write about Drew.
Well, Joel, we're excited to have you on because we continue to say on the show, I don't know if you ever watch it, but we always say we're trying to be Joel Goldberg. Anytime we have an athlete on here, we're pretending, we're like channeling our inner Joel Goldberg. So
yeah, every other episode we talk about you, Joel, because Aaron's friends with a lot of athletes. And so out of nowhere, there's an athlete that's on the show and we're like, hey, Joel Goldberg's got nothing on us.
Well, it's crazy because I don't know that I know anyone that is less interested in sports and is friends with more sports people than Aaron, which is really a testament to Aaron's ability to connect with everybody. That's what that is. I mean, seriously, Aaron becomes best friends with these superstar athletes. There is a lesson to it, though, I believe, is that athletes, CEOs, leaders, people in high-profile positions are treated so awkwardly and differently sometimes because people put them on pedestals. And when they're treated like a normal person, it's so much more comfortable for them. And Erin, in her most innocent of ways, she doesn't know who they are. She's just making conversation, and they relish the fact that they're not being treated in some kind of a weird way. I think that that's how Erin has made so many friends with so many people. She's not looking for autographs. She's just treating them in a really friendly and innocent way, which is great.
Well, I appreciate that. You're welcome back on the show anytime.
Ah.
Well, and now I've heard Drew's like a football player too, right? With the touchdown. That's how he introduced you. So tell us who you are and what else you do besides the touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm Drew, and this is my second time doing a podcast like this. My first one was actually with Joel over the summer, so I can vouch for the fact that he does do a great job on his podcast and is talking about a lot of issues that are very relevant to today. So check that out as well if you haven't already. I grew up for the most part here in Kansas City by way of my father, who was in the telecom industry. Sprint back then was the world headquarters was based in Kansas City. And so we moved around a little bit with Sprint, but predominantly here in Kansas City. And I was able to leave for a little while in college and came back to work in the energy efficiency industry. So I work for a company now called McKinstry. And in a nutshell, what we do is design, fund, and implement facility plans. So we work with the public sector, so anything from school districts to cities to counties, healthcare, higher education, anybody who's getting money from the state or the government, we'd go in and help them identify different ways to reduce their utility spend and energy infrastructure to become more sustainable. We have a really vast reference base in the K-12 market here in Missouri. And my job was to go in and build on that success into new markets. And so it's been quite a ride. It's been a lot of fun and a challenge definitely this year, trying to do business development over Zoom usually. So I'm doing that. And I've also had the opportunity to do a lot of great things in the community and just joined a founding board, or a fund, I should say, where we'll be investing $6 million into the local Kansas City community over the next few years. So really excited about that and talk about that at some point today.
That is huge. So looking forward to you sharing a little bit more about that, because I think that's a little cliff note, but a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it was like just a teaser, just enough that people can stay tuned in. I'm excited about it.
Most importantly, I'm making Don Julio today.
Don Julio?
Oh.
Let's see. Look at you guys. I knew your friends were going to come with drinks, Scott. I knew it. I like it. All right, sir. For the two people on here that have maybe not heard of you, if there's even two, who are you, Mr. Harry Campbell? What do you do, and how did you get here?
Well, two things that have nothing to do with that question. First of all, Lamont's got to be your dad.
It is.
He and I were peers and worked together a long time ago. I saw the last name and I said, I wonder. And now you're like talking about telecom and your dad. That's beautiful. So
all coming together.
Says hi. Second of all, I'm sporting red, even though I didn't put the Indiana logo on it, because we are kicking some tail. Notice the word there. It's not a cuss word. At football and basketball right now. And so I'm flying my team's colors. I am here very simply because I came to work for Sprint in 1992. I spent 7 years at P&G out of school. That was plenty of time. Came in 92, been here 28 years, done a variety of different things, but I'm not leaving. I love Kansas City. I hate the Big 12, but I love Kansas City, so I do what I can. I'm going to roll right into the recent wins because I can do this very quickly because I don't do anything right now. And so I can brag about some stuff that happened with people that I am surrounded by. I do mentoring and investing in four of the companies that I'm dealing with. Super Dispatch, led by Beck. Mighty Good, led by Ben. Idle Smart, led by Jeff Lynch. And Novel Growth Partners by Keith Harrington and Carlos. It is so cool to be associated with startups and or early stage companies that are doing really well in the city. I am not an entrepreneur. I'm an intrapreneur, and it gets me just jacked up to hang around with these guys. So congratulations. The other business that I spend a lot of time with is through the Hellsberg Entrepreneurial Mentoring Program. I got a 3-year commitment to spend time with image makers, and Dan Holmgren's their owner in Wamego, Kansas, and they are killing it this year. He's going to exit this year on an incredible growth curve, and it's fun to be around those successes. And then I'll put one plug in for myself with regard to a success is I just went over 10,000 books sold. I have 3 books that I publish, and I do keynote speeches, and I just hit a really cool milestone of 10,000 between the 3 books, and so I'm fired up about that. As you know, I give that money, the speaking and the book money, to Head for the Cure charity.
Harry, how much money have you raised for Head for the Cure?
$470,000 since I started this journey in 2012 with my first book and my first paid keynote.
And what are you going to do when you hit the $500,000 mark?
I'm going to celebrate, have some Rieger, maybe some Tank 7. Those are my 2 faves. And then I'm going to try to figure out how the heck I'm going to get to $1 million.
Great. So Aaron, you asked the next question, but the one story I do want to tell is that Mazuma Credit Union, Joel came to hear Harry speak, and Joel and Harry have just been everywhere and anywhere along with Frank and Drew throughout. I mean, shoot, that was 2017, but it's crazy how much all 4 of you are 4 of the most well-known people, I think, in the business community in Kansas City. So it's wonderful to have you all on the show, and it's amazing, Harry, that you've gotten to the 10,000 books and closing in on the $500,000 raised for Head for the Cure.
Thanks.
Yeah, actually, Mike Meyer over here said, what a great group of guests today. You know what unfortunate position I was in one time? I spoke between these 2. I think, Harry, did you go first and Joel, you went last, and I was in between?
At the FinTech thing out on Ward Parkway, right?
Over on Ward Parkway at that bank. It was
the bank, yeah. The FinTech, they had that really cool little auditorium thing inside their bank there. Yeah, that was fun.
I spoke between these 2, so you want to talk about having a lot of energy and a lot of nerves all at the same time.
Yeah, I was able to cuss there, though.
So sorry. On that note, let's head over to the next question. Frank, why don't you tell us about one of your recent wins? We often hear a lot of the stuff that's not going right now, but we'd love to tell people what is going right so they can start to tap into that for themselves. So talk to us about some of your wins during this past year.
Okay, great. Yeah, like I said, we focus on what we call transportation-oriented development, and we had 2 projects. We got done. We got a development agreement down in 3rd and Grand in the city market, and a project that's with CBC and ABC developers, and one with Millhouse Development on 31st and Truce. That'll be worth about $75 million. And so these will be some of the first major TOD projects done in Kansas City. Really leveraging the streetcar line down in the city market. It's going to be a streetcar stop right by that place. It's going to be an apartment complex. And then also on 31st and Truce with the Truce Max. So they're going to be apartment complexes. One's going to be more for affordable housing. One's going to be market rate with some affordable housing mixed into it. But they're really statement projects for what we can do with public transportation, and not necessarily transportation as a whole. And so those are 2 of our biggest wins. We pulled those together in about 10 months. So we got to move pretty quick through a COVID environment, which is pretty exciting. And we've also got coming up in 2021, just a host of different projects with the streetcar being expanded now to the riverfront and down to the plaza. We've got a lot of interest in just going to Main Street We've got a lot of interest going on the east side and some of those corridors on Prospect, as well as some of the industrial parks going on around Kansas City that we're heavily involved in. One was the Urban Outfitters Project in KCK. I think it's 2,000 to 3,000 new jobs. And we're also the first time that it was done in the country that we were able to carve out incentives from the state of Kansas to support sustainable public transportation. So we're really trying to be very clever and creative in how we use public transit, how we use incentives, how we do public-private partnerships in a way that's ever been done. And what we're doing is really has not been done across the United States at all. So we were tasked to create it 2 years ago. We're kind of making it up as we go and creating policy as we go, but it is actually working. And so it's been a really good year, COVID aside, but to pull those off through fax machines, emails, PDF signatures. So that's probably been the biggest thing we've done professionally so far this year.
That's awesome. I love our do you ride the streetcar very often, Frank?
I used to.
Right.
Before, I spent a lot of time on our buses, on our streetcar, trying to get an understanding how our system works so I can explain it to people in layman's terms. I was on a call today with somebody explaining the zero fare concept, how it works, how those things get done. So a lot of what we do, I spend most of my time in front of non-transportation people. So I'm a business community, civic leaders trying to explain why public transportation, why it matters. Even if you don't use it, people that you might work with use it. People that you go get your goods and services from, and they may use it. So it's just kind of like police and fire department. Transportation has a role to play in our region, and it's our job to go out there and, like I said, use the economic development tools to grow it, acknowledge it. And it may not even be transportation. It might be just building up a housing complex, or it might be bringing jobs to an area that wouldn't come because they didn't know that they had transportation at that area as well. So our role is a little bit different, but it's all about trying to connect people to opportunities and bring this region together.
Well, we're down in the River Market, and we use the streetcar often, and it is one of my favorite parts of living in this city. So,
yeah, I mean, it's going to go to the riverfront, and sooner rather than later, it'll be going across Highway 9 one day. So it'll be exciting.
Well, that's a pretty big win. I would say a $75 million win is a pretty big win. So, Mr. Goldberg, follow that up.
I can't top that at all, other than to say that it's just amazing to see the development. And, I think unlike a couple or a few of you guys on this call, I did not grow up here, but it's very much home. I mean, this is the place that I'm proud to call home, proud to raise our kids. And so, everything, it's been interesting to me just to be more involved now in the business community. And then that networking really started with Scott Havens. And I think Scott said, I'm going to introduce you to everybody in town. And that's happened. And so to be able to not just watch the progress of this town, but to be able to know the people that are involved in it really has been a source of pride. So I can't, on a personal level, touch that. I could just say that as a guy that never in my wildest dreams thought about or considered writing a book, I came to understand when I started the speaking business that it was something that would be important to do. I just didn't know what that would be. And so I know that when I started the speaking business 4 years ago, and everyone said, you gotta write a book. Speakers write books. And my true self-assessment was, what am I gonna write about? I mean, I could write a book about the Royals World Championship, but that's already been written. I could write a how-to book about business. There's plenty of that out there. So I sort of tabled it and started the podcast. And, hundreds of guests later, it just became very clear to me that there was a great topic to write about, playing off of the baseball theme, a little bit of small ball, which is how the Royals won, the singles, the bunts, the little things, the defense, the sacrifices, the stolen bases in baseball terms. And that became a question that I asked all of my guests over the years. One of the questions that I would ask is, what is small ball to you in your world? The little things adding up to the big things. And suddenly just this large collection of stories started to build. And then during the pandemic, I actually started doing more podcasts because I was out of work for baseball. And so instead of doing one podcast a week, it was 5 live video streaming podcasts, kind of like this. And so more stories. And then, during this pandemic, I really kind of finalized where I was going with the book and finished up the writing. And so that's coming out on Monday, and I'm excited about it. I mean, I'm a storyteller. I don't. Harry's seen it, and Harry can really speak and write from a different experience. I mean, he's been in those boardrooms. He has been in those leadership roles. And my experiences are more coming from the locker room and the clubhouse. But what I really came to learn in recent years is there's so many similarities in terms of the way you build successful teams, in terms of the way that you handle different personalities, in terms of the way that you lead and try to bring people together and build a culture. And I saw this really unique symmetry between what was going on with sports teams and what was going on in the business world. So the book is structured almost like a baseball game. Every chapter is an inning, and each chapter has a top half and a bottom half. And one half of the chapter is a business story, and one half of the chapter is a baseball story. Jay Rieger, who many of you are drinking right now, is featured in the book in a chapter called The Pivot, because Jay Rieger and Company, as many of you know, Andy's great-great-grandfather was a great-great-great-grandfather, started Jay Rieger and Company back in the 1800s, and it went out of business because of Prohibition. And now here they have this beautiful brand new building, and not too much after that, the pandemic hits, and they were on the verge of some scary stuff, and they made it. The other half of that chapter on The Pivot is the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the history of the Negro Leagues, and the fact that back in 1920 they were told, we don't want you, so they started their own league. So the book is full of that, and I hope people will enjoy it from a storytelling standpoint. And it's very strange. Harry knows this because he's done it 30 times. Thank you, Linda, for I can say thanks to Linda for her support, but who is not supported by Linda with her positivity and energy? We all know that. But it's a very strange thing. Harry's gone through it 3 times now, to see that book finished and to hold that copy and say, wait a minute, really? I did this. So it's a very powerful thing. I'm really excited about it.
Congrats.
Yeah, I mean, all sorts of people are really excited over here, and we've even got questions we're going to come back to. But I am just going to put it on the record right now. The first time Harry and I ever met was at a lunch, and he brought me autographed copies of the book. So I'm going to want an autographed copy of the book. Okay?
Yeah, I will. I'll whatever he did, I'll do more.
It makes me feel like a big cheese to sign my book. The dang thing is 100 pages double spaced, and I hired a ghostwriter because I couldn't write it. Joel's got me whipped from here to there. I don't write them. I tell stories and they turn into a book.
Well, I got autographed copies, is all I'm saying.
Aaron, I sent you an email, Joel. It's not a PDF, but it's a cover of the book. So I don't know if you'd even be able to put that on the screen, or if Joel would want us to.
I'm working on it. I should have got this before the show, and I definitely.
I know that's my fault. That's my fault. So, Drew, you had a 5-minute intro and just a brief little 10 seconds. A $6 million fund. When you look at alt cap and all the great things that they're doing in the community. What you're doing, and what we'd love to learn more about. If that's your recent win, I know there's a lot of things that you've recently done, like being president of the entire Centurions group overall, and just recently retiring from that. But what do you want to share with us as a recent win?
Yeah, I think, work-wise, it's been a unique year, obviously, for everybody probably with the pandemic. But, we did what we wanted to in terms of diversifying to new markets. And so, in Missouri, we probably have, 80 plus projects, whether it be building new buildings, solar power, lighting retrofits, HVAC, kind of a lot of different stuff. And we were able, as of today, to plant another flag in the state to diversify into new markets. And so, hopefully we can carry that momentum, moving forward, and helping these municipalities and public entities become more sustainable and reduce their utility budget so they can spend that money, which is pretty tight right now, obviously, on other things. But in terms of this fund, it's something that I'm really excited about. It's a friend of mine that I grew up with and his family. They have a large foundation here in Kansas City, and him and I have always thought alike in terms of, social equity and social justice. And especially this year, those conversations kind of heated up if we ever had the opportunity to do something together. And so him and his siblings, they're on the board of trustees of this particular foundation. went and we received $6 million to start our own fund, which is called the Hadley Project, which will begin in 2021. And so the model is to flip philanthropy on its head a little bit. So if you look at philanthropy in the past, it's usually made by older people who have usually had the money for a long time that are usually Caucasian in most aspects. And so, what the cool thing about this is one, we want to get a diverse board with more diverse interests and focus on those areas that haven't had that social equity, which there's a lot of in the Kansas City metro area. So invest in 501c3s that are minority owned, invest in 501c3s that, if they're not minority owned, a lot of the work that they do benefits people of color in this community, and help them, whether it's operating budget, whether it's they need to hire somebody, whatever it is. Minority businesses have been hit harder than most during this pandemic. And so if we can help them, sustain during the time being and help them grow for the long term and create these long-term partnerships where, it's not a one-off thing where we say we're going to give you money in 2021 and that's it. My job is to go meet with these people and build these relationships in these neighborhoods and, make sure that we're doing the right thing. And, hopefully the goal is after 3 years to keep it going and work with all the other great philanthropic organizations in the city, to partner with them and say, look what we're doing in these areas, and hopefully they'll do more of that. And so you double and triple the amount, of impact that you're able to have. So it's something that I'm really excited about. And, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm sure we'll make a lot of mistakes, but it'll be fun to make mistakes and learn from them and keep going. Hopefully make things better.
Let Aaron and I know when you're ready to present that to the Business Journal. That is crazy.
$6 million.
So awesome. Huge.
Yeah, we're going to do $1 million in 2021, 2 million in 22, and 3 in 23. And then we'll go back to this board and hopefully, continue what we've built. So it's a great opportunity, and I'll take you up on that Business Journal offer here in a couple months, I think.
They're probably watching. They usually watch over here too, but we'll take the credit, Scott.
Yeah, we will. I was actually on the phone with Brian Caberline yesterday and had lunch with Stacy on Friday. But I think the Business Journal does a wonderful job highlighting a wide variety of different businesses, and they really are. This is a business show, but we try to have a greater impact. But Aaron and I are just huge fans of the Business Journal because they've been so good to us and so good to a lot of the other folks in the business community. So I think, they would love to help you tell your story and draw attention to get opportunity in the hands of folks that can really grow our city.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's amazing. Scott kind of gave me a heads up on that, and I was like so excited.
I was like, Aaron, you're going to pee your pants.
This is the first time you've announced it, right?
What's that?
This is the first place you're announcing it, right?
It is. Drinks with Leaders, Bank of Blue Valley.
Oh, you're hired. You're in.
Yeah. Free drinks for Drew.
Hey, I'll take them.
All right.
God, I know.
Now we're going to head over to your dad's friend.
Yeah.
And I know you talked a little bit about wins, Harry, but tell us a little bit of other great stuff you've had going on. I feel like you've been everywhere during the pandemic, at least virtually.
And those are not all startups, Harry. Those are big. I mean, they're growing over 60, 70 employees. They're not small businesses.
I said startup and early stage, to be fair, but yes, you're right. Prior to the pandemic, what I did was I wandered around the city and tried to spend time with people, mentoring informally and formally, sometimes business-wise, sometimes about people. I would go to plant my flag in the crossroads at some place like Hello Big Idea. They would have a place that I can use their Wi-Fi, do breakfast, do lunch. Now I can't do that, but I found that you can do a lot more if you choose to do it by walking downstairs and getting on the Zoom. I do a lot more connecting, I would say more frequent now. And they happen to be here. And I will tell you, I didn't do speeches for probably 3 or 4 months after the pandemic started. Hey, Julie.
Hi. Harry mentors Julie.
And what I found is people are coming back and realizing they need to do stuff, and they're booking. And I've had 9 or 10 recent bookings. I got another 4 or 5 for January. So I really like the idea that folks are realizing, you know what, this is not something that's going to go away anytime quickly. And you don't have to give up. You don't have to throw the flag down, the white flag, and surrender. What you can do is you can have an event. And the Centurions was an example of one that the 2-day event, and they had everything was virtual, but they did it at a production studio. It was very cool. And I thought it was extraordinarily well done. So I'm having fun doing it. I do, as a presenter, Joel will appreciate this. You're kind of like a stand-up comic. You try to read the audience, you give and take, you change your gig on what's going on the fly. On Zoom, you've got bunch of tiles of people just staring at you. The other day, I spoke to 320 Northland Caps high school students, and even if they think you're funny, they're not going to laugh at you. They're just staring at you. And so it's a lot harder to kind of get the mojo going and really get the momentum. But I'm having fun, and I'm doing everything I can to meet with and spend time with small businesses. I'll call them emerging businesses or startups, because those are the ones that are the lifeblood of the city, and that's the fun place for me to spend my time, because those are the folks that are drinking it in. They're wanting to learn, and it's more fun to spend time with them. And frankly, I've got the time, so I do it.
Harry, I'm going to give you, I have no business giving you any tips, but I'm going to give you a tip that I did the other day that actually went really well. I spoke to a college, and I made them practice big laughing at the very beginning because I thought it made me feel better.
So you know what? I like that.
They probably thought I was a total dork, but I was like, I'm going to need it really big so I feel better in the corner of my bedroom.
You know, whenever I meet with Scott, I tell him to nod his head and smile at me as if I'm saying really smart stuff. And he does that for me, and it makes me feel really good.
A lot of what I've learned in business comes from Harry. And I just recently, Harry, someone was trying to use another terminology for hiring. You say you hire people that you like and that you want to be around that are curious. Because if you enjoy being around them and they're curious, they'll figure it out. And so they were trying to say it in a different way. I won't say who it was. I was like, you stole that from Harry Campbell's speech.
Okay, protect me, man. I like that.
See, I feel like I had one little benefit. I remember, Harry, when we both started speaking virtually, I remember you saying, like, I don't like this at all. I can't see anyone. And you know, we all feed off of energy, but anyone that's ever heard Harry speaks know that he'll be the most energetic guy in the room. I mean, I work with a guy like Harry and Rex Hudler, and it's the same type of thing. You're smarter than Hud. I would tell Hud that, but you know, you guys need that interaction, and we all do to some extent. I mean, that's why we're all going through what we're going through, sitting at home and Zoom fatigue and needing that connectivity. But I will say that having done countless extra innings, late night, 1 a.m, 2 a.m, post-game shows where you're sitting there looking into a camera in a dark stadium and there's no one there in Boston, or you're out in Anaheim and there's a 2-hour difference to back home, and you're sitting there thinking, is anybody out there right now at 2:30? Well, somebody is, so I better try to perform and raise the energy. And so it's a little bit of a mind game. I mean, for anyone, and I know we weren't going here, but when we do these calls, if you are able to see any faces, I always pin someone up on the top that just looks like either someone that I know or someone that's engaged or smiles or does the nod, so that you feel like, okay, somebody's actually listening to me. But otherwise, you almost have to create it yourself. And I'm telling you, we did one year in 2013. I wrote about this briefly in the book. We did a post-game show that started at 3:14 in the morning in St. Louis. So, and then I made the mistake of going on Twitter and saying, is anyone even watching anymore? And apparently there are a lot of people that are up at 3:14 in the morning.
One last thought. Down here in my basement, I got the light all set up and everything. And we have a 7th grader. He's our youngest. And he loves sloths, so he has a lot of stuffed animal sloths. So he set them up in bleacher form, so they're watching me. So now I actually have an audience, and it's a bunch of stuffed sloths who really think I'm cool.
Way to go, Matthew.
There you go.
I'm going to give a shout out. Her name is Tara Hefner, and she's over at Unbound. She introduced me for a keynote the other day, and it was a keynote that's the webinar right, for GEW. And she asked me before the introduction, she said, would you like me to stay on here so you can see my face, so you have someone to talk to? She asked me that, and she sat there the whole time and listened to me, so I had a face to look at. And so Tara Hefner, connect with her. She is really looking out for people. It was wonderful, because it is hard. Those webinar ones are even harder, right? You got nobody to look at. All right, well, we are going to start jumping into questions. We already have a bunch of questions, but if you ask a really good one, I might move yours up. So get over here and start asking questions. We are going to start for this one, because I'm really interested about this. Frank, for you, from Mike Meyer. You see the streetcar going east versus west versus just north-south to make transit more available to more communities? And if so, when?
The streetcar will always be north-south. Consider it the spine of the city. So your east-west will always be bus. Just one, because of the last election, the way the question one went, you'll no longer be able to do the specific tax zones. And the east-west just gives you more flexibility, a mile east-west or so. And so you're probably looking at 5 years till streetcar will be done to the plaza, but east-west will always be bus. You might see not necessarily a max line, but something a little more high frequency bus service from the east-west, but that is the focus. So think of it, like I said, the spine, the arms, the legs are going to be east-west, and then we build around that. And it's actually, there's studies on Independence Avenue, Linwood, going east and west. So this is all in motion right now. So it'll be within the next 5 years.
Awesome. Just in time for my kids to move out and me to move downtown. I like
Yeah.
that.
I just found out my youngest daughter just got approved for her apartment, and she's moving out in January. So I'm like, that should be my big win. My last daughter is gone.
Yep, Frank, give everyone a back. How many kiddos do you have?
I have 3 daughters. And so she was my last one that's at home, and now I'm going to help her pack.
Just living with a teenager during a pandemic is no easy feat for anyone.
Well, I love her to death, man, but it's time to move on.
All right, Joel, let's first of all, raise your hand if you've watched The Queen's Gambit yet on Netflix. Oh, really?
It's good.
Not yet.
It's on my list.
It's so good. Okay, so hopefully, Joel, I see that you haven't seen it, but hopefully this will make sense. So Miss Jennifer Dehan has been on the show, and she always pipes in, and I love her so much. Joel, there is talk about the Netflix effect, The Queen's Gambit, and the power of storytelling on society and propelling trends like chess. As someone who has collected hundreds of stories from countless leaders, what is one that has invoked most change for you personally? So just so you guys know, chess sets are up 500%, like the selling of chess sets. So that's kind of what she's talking about with storytelling. So what's one that invokes that for you personally?
Well, Jen, thanks for bringing up a show that I have not watched yet, but it's on my list. I added it to the list. So as soon as I finish, which one am I watching right now? I'm watching Yellowstone right now, the 3rd season.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah, I have this bad habit of I start 10 shows at once, and then 3 years later I've gone through like a third of each of them, and then I never get there. But everybody's raved about the Queen's Gambit, so that is next on my list. But I'll just go with something that I know and that I really know and that I experienced, and that's the Royals. And this is what I mean by it. I mean, people around town knew the Royals, but when they started to win and they were going to the World Series in 14 and 15, there were people that regularly came up to me and would say, I'm not really even a baseball fan, but I can't sleep at night. I got to watch these guys. And then I remember I was doing a hockey game out of town up in Wisconsin, and one of the guys on my crew who's from here was wearing a Royals hat. And it was like everywhere we walked around town and nobody knew who we were, they wanted to talk Royals. And that had never happened before. So I think there was a storytelling element of that locally, in the sense that all of these guys became superstars. And then nationally, everybody knew the Royals as this really cool Midwest Cinderella story. And I couldn't go anywhere without people bringing it up. And I think that's what happens when you have that interesting or successful story, is people jump onto it, people feel engaged, people feel connected, and they want to know the characters, just like a show. And suddenly it wasn't just the superstars, it wasn't Salvador Perez, but it was everybody involved with the Royals on the field and even off the field that kind of became a part of everybody's everyday language. And I think that's the power of storytelling.
Okay, I'm going to try something here. And I hope that this goes good.
Oh, there it is.
Happy hour. So
Right.
But this is the new book. Small ball, big results.
Woo-hoo.
Power pose.
So,
Nice,
I-
Jack.
That was actually, Aaron. That was the picture that they took for Big Brothers Big Sisters, which I know that you're gonna get to in a little bit, I believe, too, for the big fundraiser this weekend, Most Wanted. And so I asked them. I said, can you can I use that for the cover? And they said yes. So
by the way, I like that.
Yeah, so with Frank and I were
Thank you,
in the
Renee.
same Most Wanted class like Aaron and Joel were,
Yeah.
and Harry came with plenty of excitement and ended up being one of the largest donors for my campaign because he's so hyped up. So Harry, thank you for philanthropically supporting. But Frank and I were running around with pictures of our head, and that's so crazy in a pandemic that you guys are helping raise money for an amazing
Right.
organization that has 100% graduation rate. And so I think you guys accepted this knowing that you'd be going into it during a pandemic. And I think you should pat yourselves on the back for accepting a really hard challenge that a lot of people were just scared of doing. And you guys jumped right in and did it. And I think you should, I know it's never easy when you're doing it, but you should be really proud of yourselves for taking something that's really hard and it became 4 times as hard and you still did it.
Yeah, it's hard. It was hard in a normal time. And I'm still recovering from that, actually. Yeah. But we broke a record that year, which was kind of cool, and I think it's since been broken. But
It's already broken this year.
yeah, but
Not
it
because
was
of me,
cool.
but-
not because of me.
Joel and I actually had a conversation about it very early on, and we just said we're going to do our best and not let it stress us out.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
you
it's helpful.
do
that
the best you can.
You do what you can. That's right, Frank.
I'm glad I did it, though. It was a great honor.
Well, we're going to give you info in just a little bit because it is on Saturday. So we're going to give you info so you can tune in. But Drew, real quick, I want to ask you, you referenced when we were in the waiting room earlier, you have some kiddos at home. So essentially what you told us is you're doing business development. You have kiddos at home, and then you're like, I'm going to take on another project, right? So kind of talk to us about the balance and what that looks like, how you make time for everything, and especially when something that you're so passionate about comes along, how you decide to fit that in an already pretty crazy schedule.
Yeah, I think something that I've learned, I've been married 6.5 years now, and with anything that I've done, I've done things like the Man of the Year campaign for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I've gotten my MBA. I've done the Centurion's leadership program with Scott and Frank, and all of that stuff is pretty time consuming. And my wife kind of knows that if I don't do something, outside of my career, I usually get pretty bored and I'm not fun to deal with. And so she's given me the flexibility and the support to go do those types of things, as long as I take care of my priorities. And so, I've told a lot of people this: you prioritize what you make priorities for. You prioritize what you want, and as long as those things are in order in terms of the amount of time you give to them, all of it can be done. It's a matter of how you manage your time. And there's a book that I read when I worked for Harry's friend Carlos's company a long time ago, Eating the Frog. So taking care of the biggest task at the beginning of the day, and everything else becomes a little bit easier if you tackle that hardest task first thing in the morning. And so I just try to manage everything as it comes. And you might be able to hear my 1-year-old outside right now. They're home with us right now, and he's screaming. So it's just making time for what you want to make time for, and giving it all you have when you do that.
Can I add something on that?
I was going to say, you could send the 1-year-old over to Frank's house. He's about to be an empty nester.
Yeah, you're empty nester. You could use one.
Well, I've got a
She can see
granddaughter. She's 6, and she could have a playmate. That'd be cool. So
I'll come over there.
I'll let your kids, Drew. They're great kids. I'd be happy to have them.
Hey,
You and I can drink bourbon.
Hey, Drew, this is Harry. I want to add something on to what you said, because as you were talking, I happen to have met Bob Berg, who wrote this awesome book called The Go Giver. It's not exactly along the lines of what you talked about. It's not inconsistent, but it's very parallel. And basically what he would say is the more you give, the more you get. And as I was listening to what you're doing and how you're doing it and the importance of the things you're doing for the business and the community and the family, I thought about it. I thought what you're doing is you're giving, and you seem very comfortable about it. So I'm going to leap to the conclusion that you're fairly sure that this is going to feel pretty damn good for you. Pretty darn good for you. And it's going to work out. And that's very cool. So congratulations. Yeah,
exactly. And I completely agree with you. You know, you try to do good, it usually comes back to you, even if it doesn't seem like it at the time. It's worthwhile. So appreciate it.
And on that note, I pulled this comment up twice, but I'm going to show it a third time because I kept pulling it up, and we got a lot of good talkers on here, so I kept pulling it back down. But Robin is actually over at Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and so she was saying thank you again to giving. It does make a lasting impression. So awesome that you did Man of the Year. All right, Mr. Campbell, we've got all sorts of stuff over here. Mike Meyer says you're the only person he ever went into lunch with and left with a check. I left with signed books, so I feel like I came out better on that. And Linda said that you spoke over the Rockhurst Executive MBA program as the pandemic was beginning, and you set the standard of excellence. To this day, students still reference him and his energy. And yes, most of them did buy your books. So with that said, what sort of like speaking, when you do speaking, you've spoke about speaking a lot. What is your like dream audience to speak to?
Wow. I love these kind of questions because I'm going to make it up on the fly. This is Unfiltered Harry Campbell. I would say younger is better. If there's a chance that I have an audience of people that think they already kind of know what they're doing and they're successful and they don't need to listen to me, it tends to be older and higher level people. Not necessarily, but it's true. My favorite audience is juniors and seniors in high school. They expect somebody, when you look at my profile, to show up that's kind of boring and pretty buttoned up. And I get up there and start spitting, waving, cussing, and telling stories. And they lean forward and they listen and they absorb and they're curious and they really, really want to hear what I have to say. And that translates to me in my body language when I'm up there. So it even works. The Northland Caps I did Friday, even though it was Zoom, it was overwhelming. The chat and the Q&A that was coming in, because it was a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds that were going to, an executive is going to talk to them. Great, from business. Oh, great. He worked at Sprint. Woohoo! Let's have a party. But it works because I'm trying to be interesting and engaging so I can impart on them some of the things that people like Sam Walton and Tom Wigman and my college cross-country coach and other people gave to me. So if you can pass it on, it's all beautiful. It's a Pay It Forward program.
Harry, did you hold a record at Vanderbilt?
I did. I had the 10,000 meter record at Vanderbilt, and it stood for 35 years until a youngster crushed me in April of 2017. So it was a lot more fun to say I'm still the record holder. Not anymore, but I had it for a while. And I run the same speed for 100 meters as I do for 10,000 meters. So I really needed to go a long way because I'm not fast.
Yeah, see, I stop at 100 meters.
Andy says Mike actually told her about getting that check too, but hashtag no checks with Zoom calls. And then do you remember?
Hey, wait a minute. I think it's important to know. Mike Meyer has such a great story. Mm-hmm. How in the heck was I not going to contribute to that great cause? And because I missed the event. It was shortly afterwards. I'm like, I'm a bum. I wasn't there. So I just wrote him a check.
Well, Scott and I were both rock stars for that event. So we absolutely agree with you as well. I do want to remind you, when us three spoke, you tell a story. So I'm going to get into sports. Are you guys ready? This is going to be, you're going to have to help me here, Joel. You were telling a story about some college football game, and it turned out that a buddy of Joel and I piped in, and he was actually one of the players in the game, and he kind of tripped you up for a second because you usually tell that story with all that umph. And then do you remember this with that Chucky Okabe? He jumped in and he had played in the game you were talking about. You told me.
He played at Purdue, and then he played for the Steelers.
Yeah. That's the only part I remember.
Aaron, we got 5 minutes. I want to make sure that we play Joel's clip, and then also we go around everyone for one last question before our time's up.
Well, we have one more last question, your icebreaker question that we were going to ask at the beginning. Are you ready? And then we're going to end with the thing. What would your walk-up song be if you had to come up with a walk-up song? We already know Harry's, but we're going to come.
You can do a second one.
You can do a second one. Frank, what would your walk-up song be?
Enter Sandman.
Ooh. Frank, you remind me of like Kevin Costner in Yellowstone in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have the land.
Yeah.
How about you, Joel?
Thought about this a lot. I don't know why. I guess it's because I've heard tens of thousands of walk-up songs in baseball. But I think it would be like a I saw one player do this over the years. It would be a rotation of Beastie Boys songs, with probably most frequent going with Sabotage, because it's got that quick, heavy, short little burst there. But anything Beasties would be good.
How about you, Drew?
I'm an old soul kind of guy. Scott knows this from our barbecues. I'll probably play, a mix of George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelics. So, the
I thought you were going to go Earth, Wind, and Fire.
We want the funk, flashlight, keep everybody moving.
Yeah.
Good time.
And I get to reinforce mine, right? I tell you, mine was Hurt So Good by John Cougar, because he's a Hoosier. And because I was the 12th man on an 11-man varsity basketball team that played against a lot of the Mellencamp's in Seymour, Indiana, when I was in Hoosier land. And I love my Hoosiers. And you know what? It's a pretty good song. I ain't talking no high heels. I ain't made no plans.
Well, you know what? We're going to do one more one-answer question. Miss Wendy Reynolds actually had a short question I wanted to play today. And I gave you guys a heads up on it so that you could process it, which I didn't do to our guests last week. So we've got about 4 more minutes, so we'll each answer this one really quickly. But this is Wendy Reynolds. She's the CEO of Bank of Blue Valley, our sponsor. So she's got a quick question, and I just love this question. So Frank, we're going to start with you right when it's done.
Okay.
What personality traits make a great leader?
Is integrity a personality trait?
Yeah.
I would say integrity.
How about Joel? What do you think?
Authenticity and positivity.
Drew?
Resiliency and adaptability.
They've got good ones, Harry. What do you got?
I'm going to start with integrity, because that shouldn't be on the board. It is an absolute must, table stakes. The two I would say were humility and accountability.
Ooh, I like humility.
Man, you guys crushed that question.
They really did.
Wendy would be very proud.
That's beautiful. That's the place to start.
With time left on the clock.
Yeah, you guys are pros.
You guys, it's like you guys have done this once or twice. All right, I want to play the thing for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I will tell you, it is Saturday night. Both Joel and I are in it. You can go to their website and you can start the bidding already. You can bid on having Joel come speak. Joel's got all sorts of cool. You've got all sorts of cool auction items, sir. Especially if you like sports. He's got sporty stuff all over his. But they are raising money. We have broken the record, but that's still not enough in a pandemic year. There's way more kids. The records have also grown for how many kids need Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I'm going to play this, and then we're going to wrap up.
You're invited to the Most Wanted auction, a reimagined virtual experience taking place on December 12th. The Most Wanted auction honors some of Kansas City's most passionate and hardworking business and community leaders. These honorees put together fundraising campaigns and unique auction packages that will be up for bids at the event, all to benefit Big Brothers Big Sisters. This year, we're going virtual, which means you'll be able to participate from anywhere you like. You can bid on hundreds of auction items, chat with other attendees, listen to music from Lost Wax, and interact with the DJ at our after party. To participate in the event, RSVP on our website so we can send you the live stream link and bidding instructions. Night of, you'll click the link from your computer or hook up to your TV where you'll watch the auction. From there, you'll be able to bid on live auction packages in real time from your phone. It's that easy. You can watch the event on your own or with a group of friends. If you choose to host a watch party, BBBS can help. Just purchase a watch party package on our website and you'll get invitations for your guests, a party pack with drinks, and technology assistance to ensure your party runs smoothly. No matter how you choose to watch, we promise a night of entertainment and inspiring mission moments. So mark your calendars for December 12th to help cheer on this year's class of honorees and support Big Brothers Big Sisters Kansas City.
That video gets me so excited. It's such
How did Adam Miller get on there? Adam Miller's everywhere.
Adam.
Drew, one time when Frank and I were doing, I think Frank was hanging out with me at the bar, and I remember being like, "Hey, Adam, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to talk a little bit about something." He was the what's it called, in the middle of the presentation. He was on stage for 30 minutes.
Yeah, he's like our own Kevin Hart.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Joel was number
Kansas
2
City's
behind
Kevin Hart.
Wesley, by the way. He was the second. I was
Yeah.
like, they're going to save the best for last, but then Wesley beat you.
Yeah.
Gonna be doing concerts in his basement before you know it.
couple things.
Hey
real quick.
man, I hit my target. That's all I cared.
I'm guessing this is for Harry. And then Caitlin said, "What a great crew of givers. Thank you so much for sharing your time and insights today. Thank you all so much for coming on. We truly appreciate it. And we will see everybody next Tuesday. And go check out Big Brothers Big Sisters event. It's free to attend. Thanks.
Take care, everybody.